Somewhere is written and directed by Sofia Coppola. It came out in 2010 and it's about a Hollywood actor named Johnny Marco and his day-to-day life between shooting films. He does things, he parties, he spends some time with his daughter, he goes to press conferences. His ex-wife calls him and tells him that she needs some time for herself, so he has to take care of the daughter until now. And that's pretty much it. Now, I don't mind when a movie doesn't really have a plot. Actually, a lot of my favorite movies doesn't, but things happen in those movies. The problem with Somewhere is that it's the other way around. It is apparent at the end that the film does have a plot, but nothing happens. Therefore, the movie becomes boring. You feel a bit bored just when the opening shot. He drives around this track a couple of times and then gets out of the car. There's no purpose to this. Is it really necessary to have two dance scenes with twins? Really, the only purpose it serves is to fill up screen time, if you ask me. He has sex with various women during the film, but that doesn't really serve a purpose either, and the scenes aren't really that mind-blowing. The film being boring does represent that his life is boring, but he shows really no signs of being bored. He's just going through his day-to-day life, a life which happens to be boring and uninteresting to watch. It gets a little less boring towards the latter half of the film, but still overall pretty boring. The acting is alright, no real complaints there. Panchos is probably the most likable guy in the film. He plays Stephen Dorff's buddy and he's chill and a little bit douchey, but in a good way. And he actually plays the part really well for what it is. Too bad he's not in the film that much, actually. Benicio del Toro makes a weird cameo. Can't say I don't enjoy it though. It's so random that it comes off as funny, and I think that's what the point of it was. The cinematography is okay, nothing groundbreaking or anything, but it's not bad. It's consistently stationary and there are not a lot of unnecessary cuts. The script has a few problems, however. They introduce things that has the potential to become interesting conflicts in the film, but they just get dismissed or completely ignored by characters. Like Johnny, he gets insulting text messages from an unknown number, but he just ignores them, and eventually the script does as well. He tells his daughter at one point that there's a car following them, and then it's never mentioned again. The prosthetic scene had the opportunity to become pretty funny. For instance, had he fallen asleep or something and his prosthetics had turned completely fucked up, but time pressure forced them to work on the fucked up prosthetics anyway, and the makeup would have just looked like shit. That would have been pretty funny, but it didn't happen. During the Wii tennis scene, I kept expecting one of them to break the TV with a controller, and I think that would have been pretty funny as well, but it also didn't happen. The press conference scene is very odd. I don't know how these things usually play out, but it seems way too unorganized for me to buy it as being real. Also, I feel like this scene is contradicting to the character, because he feels so uninterested in what he does, and yet earlier he tells his ex-wife that he hurt his wrist while shooting and that he does his own stunts. So obviously he does care about his career and acting. This is a minor thing, yes, but I just felt a bit confused as I was watching. He goes to Italy at one point and gets the key to the city in some town. I don't know why. Did they explain it in the film? I don't know. If they did, I must have missed it because of how bored I was when watching. Towards the end of the film, Johnny calls somebody up and starts crying and tells her that he's nothing. So it appears as he's having an existential crisis, which I guess could be tied into the film if he had shown any signs to this previous scene. He has all his buzz around him, so people obviously like him. He spends time with his daughter, who obviously cares about him. So this scene just feels so out of place for me. To me, it just felt like Sofia Coppola wanted to incorporate parts of her most successful movie into this movie. Somewhere ends with him stopping his car and walking away from it, meaning that he's walking away from his fancy life to spend some more time with his daughter, I guess. So yeah, final verdict. Like I said earlier, the film is pretty boring. One could argue that the film has a unique way of showing a character feeling bored, and that my complaint doesn't apply because it's the point of the film. But here's my point. If you ever feel bored, or if you're letting yourself getting easily distracted while watching, regardless of the film's intentions, it's not a good sign. You can have a film demonstrating how bored a character is in a film in a much more interesting way than to just make your audience feel bored. Because a bored audience will most likely not rewatch the film for analyzing purposes. Well, yeah, I did. Yeah, but the only reason I am talking about this movie is because I think it fitted well to be put in the title of the video. and I might as well talk about this a little bit if I'm gonna talk about the next movie anyway. So let's stop talking about Somewhere and start talking about the next movie, which is... Nowhere is written and directed by Gregg Araki. It came out in 1997 and it's about, well, nothing really. It's a heavily stylized movie showing a bunch of youths hanging out, having sex, and later going to a big party. This is one of those movies I was talking about earlier that doesn't really have a main plot. However, in this movie, things do happen. A lot of things happen. There are so many characters with their own storylines that the focus doesn't stay too long on a certain character. So if you find a certain storyline boring, then at least you have several other ones to lean on, unlike Somewhere. And unlike Somewhere, Nowhere is incredibly stylized. Everything is so bizarre. The direction is bizarre. The editing is very Godardian with jump cuts in the middle of characters' actions. The production design is amazing. I literally have no idea how Araki came up with some of this shit. I even have an amazing screenshot from the film as a desktop picture on my computer. The dialogue.
Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up! Oh, bitch!
Now, before I start talking more about the movie, I should say that it's probably one of the least accessible movies of all time. If I were to show this to 20 people, both ordinary people and the buffest of film buffs, I guarantee that at least 19 of them would absolutely hate it. It's not exactly Hunger Games, and it's not exactly Persona, meaning that it's not exactly a mainstream movie and it's not exactly an amazing art film either. Stumbling onto a clip from this film on YouTube would very much be like when you're finding yourself at that weird part of YouTube.
Today, Funny Horsie will...
Yes! Funny Horsie, Funny Horsie, Funny Horsie.
And I'm not saying that this film is weird in a way that it's impossible to understand, like a David Lynch film. This movie is just weird. So let's try to go more in depth of Nowhere. The first 4 minutes are fucking great. It shows our main character in the shower masturbating to different fantasies. It goes on to the music you're currently hearing playing in the background. And I think that the reason why I fucking love this opening sequence is because of this song. I would probably enjoy it in a different way if it had been a girl instead of a guy, but the fact that it's still possibly my favorite opening sequence of all time should tell you something. In fact, the entire soundtrack for this film is really good. Let's talk about the story and the characters. Okay, so you have Dark, who's our main guy. He's an amateur filmmaker and pretty much a hopeless romantic. His girlfriend Mel, who's more sexually wild and has sex with a lot of people, including a cynical girl with purple hair called Lucifer. Mel's little brother Zero and his girlfriend Zoe are a little younger than the rest of the characters and are trying to find directions to this big party. Then you have Montgomery, who's a bit of an outsider and a little strange. Chris and Cozy are just two very dominating girls. I don't think they're prostitutes, but they do seem to have a lot of sex in the film. Cowboy is Dark's best friend and plays in a band with his boyfriend Bart, who has a drug addiction. And hey, he's Swedish, like me! At least that's what I think, because his parents are speaking Swedish. Well, I mean, they try to, but it's obviously Americans reading lines from a piece of paper.
Det finns restetakit i kylskåpet.
I will say though that they do a much better job than some people. Anyway, back to the characters. Handjob is a drug dealer and a huge asshole. Dingbat is a bit of a nerdy girl played by Christina Applegate. Egg is a little shy girl who accidentally meets a famous TV idol and they start to hang out. Ducky is Egg's brother and he's a skater dude. Shad and Lilith are two nihilistic sex addicts. Alyssa is Shad's twin sister and she has an older and crazy motorcycle boyfriend who's called Elvis. He's awesome. I think he's my favorite character in the film. and I think that's all of them. A bunch of these guys plays a game of kick the can together, and then all the characters go to the big party organized by a dude called Juji Fruit, who we don't get to know that much. Strange things occur throughout the runtime of the film. Dark continuously sees an alien creature, and at one point he tries to catch him on film. And by far the best moment besides the opening sequence is this very odd scene.
0?
Yeah, Zoe, it's me.
Be right down.
Hey, homie.
Why so jumpy?
The film also has a religious undertone to it. There are messages written on walls and benches and stuff, and there is also some segments when a guy is preaching on television. I'm not sure though if these things are religious or anti-religious. I don't want to spoil anything, but things happen that may very well have an anti-religious meaning. But on the other hand, it may be the opposite as well. On a side note, Nowhere has the best usage of the word cool in a movie ever.
Cool.
That's about everything I have to say about Nowhere for now. I can talk about the film all day, but I think that you should watch it yourself instead of me giving the full plot and all its details. And it's only like 1 hour and 50 minutes long, so if you dislike it, you'll still have time to watch another movie or do something else entirely. Like I said earlier, it's not the greatest movie in the world, but I thought as a first video I should talk about something that I really love, and boy do I love this movie. I saw it for the first time in September 2015, and it's already in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. If you like this video and want to see more, please like it, favorite or subscribe. My name is Emil, have a good day.